The Laundry List for All Trump Haters. May 26, 2020 by Anna von Reitz. Last night on my weekly Zoom conference I had the temerity to suggest, against all the collective wisdom of the mainstream news, that President Trump is doing his job. I suppose I could have belabored the point a bit and gone into details for all the liberal catcallers in the back row, but I had a lot of other material to cover and let it slide until this morning, when, lo and behold, look at what landed in my box. The laundry list of what DJT did for you and me and the world this past week, just in case you are one of the countless people who need to know and will never hear it from the idiot box. 1. Made vaccines voluntary, not mandatory. Military will check purity and distribute vaccines. This means that federal citizens will not be forced to take vaccines. Americans were never under any such obligation. 2. Defunded the World Health Organization and is stumping for an investigation into its operations. 3. Knocked out the Democrats' H.R. 6666 bill, known as the COVID-19 Trace Act, Bill Gates Diagnosis and Tracking Surveillance Project. 4. Cancelled another Gates project, ID 2020, which would have earmarked people like cattle. 5. Opened a complaint forum to report censorship on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. 6. Stopped the 5G rollout nationwide. 7. Issued the executive order to reopen the states. Governors who refuse will be sued. 8. Another executive order to take control of the electrical grids, which will indirectly put an end to the misuse of the public airwaves by private electronic surveillance groups, like the out-of-control grid that unknown parties have been establishing to fill our skies with 78,000 mini-satellites. 9. Declared places of worship essential services and ended all that petty anti-religious nonsense. 10. Applauded efforts by Australia and 116 other countries to find out what actually happened in Wuhan and how the illness there spread to Italy and around the world so rapidly, yet never reached Beijing, and other inexplicable anomalies. Now, if you have done as much for your country and its people and for people worldwide this past week, you can afford to throw stones. If not, sit down, shut up, and listen. Donald Trump is doing his job. Are you doing yours? This morning I got an Anna hate letter, too, disparaging me for failing to report a particular United Nations website that is promoting their new Green Deal agenda, and insinuating that I was a Catholic and all in with that. I have been reporting about the Vatican rats and their intention to move their storefront from the Roman Catholic Church to the United Nations for 2 decades, and no, I am not Catholic, but even if I were, I wouldn't be responsible for what these men are doing. It's apparent that there are a lot of people out there opening their big mouths with no research or thought involved, adults acting like children in need of a good spanking. Well, here it is. I have told you all what is going on and what to expect. I have told you how the vermin among us operate, and I have been proven right too many times to mention or count. So learn the lesson and don't blame the teacher. These people deliberately pretend to be what they are not. They pretend to be Catholic, do a lot of nasty things, and then leave the Catholics to take the blame. They do the same thing with Muslims, Jews, Russians, any group they target. These people also act like parasites. When they have eaten a victim out of house and home, they move on and find new victims, just like a parasite leaves its hosts behind. So, no surprise that a lot of nasty closet communists worked their way into the church and attempted to confuse Christian communality, which is voluntary, with communism, which isn't. No surprise that these same unsavory elements engineered the death of 12 conservative cardinals who would have outvoted them in conclave. No surprise that after using the Roman Catholic Church as a storefront for money laundering and other criminal activity for hundreds of years, the parasites are moving their digs and leaving the church to take the blame. That's right. Their entire intention is to run things from the United Nations the same way they ran things behind the storefront of the church, and at the same time, turn around and persecute and blame the church. That, and finding new excuses to tax and milk and bilk and in debt and burden the people of the world while enriching themselves, is their entire, obvious, plain as glass agenda. We don't have to monitor UN websites to know that. We can sit in a kitchen chair in Big Lake, Alaska, and know that. I told the person who sent me that hate letter the facts, and then I told them to shove it up their XSS. That's the same message I have for all those who think that Donald Trump and I didn't do enough for them this past week. We are not your saviors. Someone else tried to do that for you, a long time ago. No, at most DJT and I are concerned Americans fighting for our country in a battle that most of you are too lazy, prejudiced, and self-absorbed to even think about. I know this. I have proof against 90% of my fellow Americans who have taken everything for granted and never checked a single voting record, never read a single bill passed by Congress, never thought beyond whether to have Fruit Loops or Bran Flakes for breakfast. Oh, you all like to sit around warming the bench and talk big. You all have opinions, uninformed opinions, borrowed from news commentators who are usually more naive, self-absorbed, and clueless than high school cheerleaders. You all have your idea of how the American government is structured leftover from your half-asleep time in 8th grade U.S. history class. Sure, you are real experts in all of this stuff, aren't you? Medicine, science, law. You spent your time studying and researching it all? Did you? Well, I did. You bet I did. On top of raising a family and holding a job and supporting them and myself the whole time, so I don't have a lot of respect for those of you who have spent your lives licking boots and whining and sucking on the public teat and making excuses for yourselves and for your political leaders who somehow never deliver anything they promise even when they have control of the presidency, the House, and the Senate for decades at a time. No, all they deliver is more misery and debt and servitude. And you all eat it up like sugar candy. What was it that the general relieving Bastogne said? Nuts. Question mark. Go home. Stay home. Shelter in place like hunted animals. Cower in the face of a threat that can't even be shown to exist because of the corruption of the privately owned and operated Centers for Disease Control. Plan to starve and die by the millions because you are too stupid to live, too spineless to stand up, and too brain dead to tell friend from foe. Let the nice monsters in suits tell you what brand of toilet paper to buy, until there is none to buy. Let them ear tag you like animals and then complain about where did your freedoms go? Let these criminals bilk you and tax you and bilk you some more until you lose your homes and your communities all look like inner-city Detroit. Go ahead. You can do it. Hell, you have done it up until now. Just look at Nancy Pelosi's home district in California for a preview of what is coming to your town next. Overflowing dumpsters, human feces on the sidewalks, homeless people wandering around with blank, zombie-like looks on their faces. That's you. That's your kids in a few years. That's the results that all the Washington insiders produce and deliver. And it's all right in front of your faces. For once and all time, people, realize that there is nobody but you who can change all of this. Realize that what you do now, right now, decides the future. And stop criticizing Donald Trump and me and everyone else out here breaking our backs and our bank accounts to try to save you from yourselves. Turn that looking glass around and get a good look at the real problem.